So I think we'll kick off by sort of delving back into your history a little bit. Now we all know you today as like one of the big names in, trying not to leave you up too much, one of the up and coming names in the ultra endurance community. But that's very different to your background. So you have a really strong time trialing and racing background. When did you start doing that?
Yeah, so I started, I mean, I don't know who knows the story, but I started cycling when I was 21, so quite old. Before that, I didn't do much athletics in any way. I played football, did boxing. I tried loads of different things, but was pretty bad at most of them. And around 20, I started commuting by bicycle across London, because it was the easiest way to get from where I lived in South to the university I was at in sort of East London. And I really enjoyed that, and we lived near Herne Hill. And I went down to Herne Hill and I did a track event and really enjoyed that. And I kind of started looking more into it about racing, because I thought, oh, this is good fun. And I think I was second at the track event, so I thought, well, maybe I'm not so bad. And I lived near Catford, and there was Catford CC. There was a few other clubs around. There was like Dulwich Paragon, who are like the massive club in London. But I was like, I can't join them because everyone joins them, so I've got to find someone a bit different, which perhaps sums up
Is that kind of
me.
reflective?
Yeah, like a little bit. Everything's got to be a bit different. So I went down to Catford because they had an open time trial, like an evening one. They said, come down, we can meet, you can try it out, see how you get along. So I turned up on my road bike, and I think I got round in 21 minutes or something, which was the fastest time on the evening, and I won the time trial. So that was a pretty good start. And at this point in time, they were just starting an under 23 team. And I was invited to join the team quite quickly, because obviously having won the time trial, they had 6 or 7 riders at the time trial who were meant to be on the team already, and I just turned up and beaten them all. So they said, join our under 23 team, and we'll go racing. So I then started road racing from that year. We had cars and we had all sorts of stuff. We weren't paid, but we went to races and things. And I did that for a year as well. And so I spent 3 years racing. And I raced at the top level in the UK. I got around a few of them. No notable results there, but it was a really good time actually.
I wonder how many of us here have had the like hardcore roadie racing stage. I know there's a few. On a scale of 1 to like wannabe world tour, how like dialed in were you in terms of like FTP numbers and zone training? And
I always take everything really seriously, and which is probably why I'm quite good at things, because I do everything like 100%. I don't waste time. If you're going to do something, do it properly. Otherwise, just don't bother doing it.
Yeah.
So I took it really seriously, and I trained really hard, and I was good. But I'd only been cycling for 2.5 years by the time I started racing at the top level in the UK. And this was against people who'd been doing it for 15 years, or since they were, 9 as well. And so it was a bit of a baptism of fire. So I think at the time I was pretty upset with like the performances, but looking back on it, going from like nothing to that in 2 years is pretty respectable.
Yeah. So you're at this stage 23 or so?
Yeah, it's more or less.
Really into road racing, time trialing.
Yeah.
Then there's like the Transcontinental. How do you make that leap?
Yeah.
It's not exactly the same thing.
No, it's quite different. So I started riding bikes to get across London. So my primary use for bicycles in the beginning was transport and commuting. And I'd also use that to go out and explore the countryside. And from the beginning, one of the things I really enjoyed most from a bicycle was just being able to get out there and see things that I might not be able to see. And I enjoyed the pace of a bicycle, because I find walking too slow. I can't go running because I'm terrible at it. And I don't really enjoy driving because you don't go through the small villages and the small towns and see the interesting things. So the pace worked for me. And at the end of each sort of cycling season for the 3 that I did, I'd pack up my bicycle, put on some panniers, and just kind of go into Europe touring. And this was in August time. Yeah, August time, so it's pretty late in the year. And it was generally quite cold and quite wet by that point. So I began getting quite acclimatized to bad weather. And for me, touring was never sort of like, 3 hours with a kind of nice long lunch in the middle, and then maybe, a nice long dinner with a couple. Yeah. For me, touring was always solitary by myself, and I'd ride from sunrise till sunset, and every day was a mission on how far I could ride each day. I never rode through the night. At that point, I didn't know that was a thing that you could do. But I remember knocking out sort of, 12, 13-hour days across the mountains, nearly Everesting and things. And it became an obsession to how far I could push myself each day, until the point where I'd take a rest day because I was so nailed from the 6 days previously. And that was touring. That was like my fun idea of touring. And so, in a sense, ultra endurance racing may seem very different to road racing, but I had always been doing things like that. Just I didn't understand perhaps what I was doing. But there was a point in this kind of second road season, and we were driving 4 hours to do a 4-hour race and driving 4 hours back, and I thought, this is rubbish. This isn't who I am. This isn't what I enjoy doing. And it kind of dawned on me that this isn't what I want to do. I'm not getting from cycling what I actually want. It's taking away from sort of what I used to get and being able to explore. And I spend my weekend sat in a car, which is terrible. And at the one day for training, I was meant to do a 6-hour ride, and I thought, okay, 6 hours, that's fine. I'll do that. But how can I make this more enjoyable? And I thought, I know, I will ride a lap around London. Because I live in London, I still do. Well, yeah, you can't do it in 6 hours, but I thought, okay, I'll ride a lap around London. I started plotting it on Ride with GPS, and it came out to 200 miles. And I thought, well, I've never done 200 miles before either, in one go. So I thought, this is perfect. How fast can I do this? And I just spent the whole day riding. I got up early, went out riding. You have to get the ferry across the Thames. And I got back and it was 11 hours and 58 minutes. I realized sort of halfway around that I was on for that. And I was like, got to do it under 12 hours, got to do it under 12 hours. And I knocked out 200 miles in under 12 hours, and I was like, solid. And I was like, that's what I enjoy doing. And I was like, I need to find something like this.
Okay. And then how do you even come across the Transcon? Did you see it in social media, on the web, on the internet, or did you know somebody?
I don't really remember the first time I heard about it, but it was the first edition I didn't hear about, but it was the second edition I heard about when Josh and Christoph were racing each other. And I got really sucked into following it, as with dot watching. It's quite obsessive. And I was just sitting at the computer every day following this race, and I thought, how can they do this? It's not possible. These people, they're racing across a continent. No, it's not possible. And I was just sitting there, and this was around the same time where I was quite dissatisfied with the road racing and the way that was going. And I wasn't going to be continuing with road racing the following year. I decided to go back to university and get a degree in civil engineering. And I was like, okay, maybe I can do something else in the summer, because I'm going to have a summer. And then I kind of thought, well, just enter, just do it. And from 1 minute of how the hell can you do this? I was still, how the hell can you do this? But I'm entering, I'm going to see what I can do. And no second thoughts.
So I think a lot of people here will know you, or I certainly got to know you from your transcontinental success. So James won Transcontinental no less than 2 times, but that isn't your only experience with the race.
Yeah.
So what happened the first time?
So I did Transcontinental 4 times.
First 2 times, sorry.
Yeah, the first 2 times. So I did it 4 times. Some people might have learned after the first that once was enough, and a lot of people do. But so the first time I went, I had no real experience in ultra endurance racing. I mean, I'd ridden 200 miles around London, and I was kind of sat there thinking to myself earlier in the year before the race, I need some experience. If I'm going to ride this race, I need to do something that's going to give me confidence when I start, that I believe in myself. I'd road raced for years. I'd trained day in, day out for 3-4 years now. I knew I had the physical ability. That wasn't really a problem for me. I knew I was fit. I knew I was strong. That should translate out to, riding a long way. But I didn't have the confidence on how to look after myself, what you do when you need to ride at nighttime, what the weather's like, how to eat, how to feed. So what I decided to do earlier on in the year was I rode from the UK down France. I essentially followed the route of the race that year. So I'd plotted it out already, and I thought I'll just recon that and ride to Italy, do 12-hour days every day, and that'll just be training for 2 weeks. And then when I get to Italy, I take 3-4 days off, rest, recover, and then I'll ride from, it was Chioggia. I stopped at Chioggia, so it's just south of Venice, real nice place. And rode back from Chioggia to Brussels, over the Dolomites, and then through the Black Forest. And I thought that would be solid. And if I can do that in 3 days, that'll be good. And so it was about 900K, like 16,000 meters of climbing, give or take. It was pretty good. And yeah, I did that in just under 3 days. And when I finished that, it kind of gave me the confidence that I needed going into the race that maybe I'd be okay. I didn't really know. So I turned up at the Transcontinental at the start of it, and there was loads of, amazing people there. Christoph was there, and these people that I kind of followed, and I was like, intimidated. I have no right to be here. And we set off racing into the night, and for me, I knew the start would be okay. I knew I was going to be pretty fast in the beginning from my road racing, and I knew from doing 3 days across Brussels to back to Brussels that I'd be reasonably quick. So I thought, okay, I'll just smash out in the beginning, we'll race to the first checkpoint, and then it'll be easy from there. So this year it was, in the first time, it was 980 kilometers to Mont Ventoux from Belgium, more or less straight out. And I know did Christoph race? I get confused. 4 races and it's all a blur in my mind. But anyway, I knew that Christoph had done this distance in 38 hours, give or take, with a car following him and filling him up. And I was like, I'm going to beat that. And I got there to the first checkpoint in 36 hours, and I was like, I've won the race. This is it. It's done. Forget the 3,000 kilometers we still have to go. Who cares? I'm done here first. And that was the point. From then on, things started to fall apart. So I made it to the first checkpoint. First, I'd slept 2 20-minute power naps to get there, which is not an advisable strategy. I was learning the wrong way. The first time out was a lesson in what not to do, so that the second time out I could just do the exact opposite. And so from there, things started to fall apart, and I started to have problems with my neck. And by the third checkpoint, it was just too bad, and I scratched. And I had what was termed Schirmer's neck, after the guy, Michael Schirmer, that had it. And you essentially lose the function in the back of your neck, and you can't hold your head up. I mean, I'm sure most of you know what this one is, and if you haven't been on Google to look it up, do. It's hilarious.
I think we've all seen the picture.
Yeah, I don't have it, but if you go on Google, there's a picture. It's hilarious. But I got Schirmer's neck, and the pain, I actually experienced pain, and the pain started to go down my back. And at this point, I decided that it's not really very sensible pain in the back. No way. I mean, I've been holding my head up like this for 1,000K already, so I was like, it's done. And that was the first time out. And before, I kind of went to a hotel, decided I was going to scratch, but it was nighttime, so I was like, I followed the rules. You don't scratch at night, you wait till the morning and then you scratch. And I still felt like it in the morning. And before I'd even scratched, I was like, I'm scratching, but I'm coming back next year. Yeah, because I realized that I'd made a lot of mistakes, but I was really excited to kind of see the potential that I had. And I knew that perhaps I had potential if I stopped making rookie mistakes. So
fast forward to your 4th attempt then.
Yeah.
And we were very lucky to take a look over James's bike the morning of the race. So they start at 9 o'clock, I think, at night, or was it 10?
No, it was dark, yeah.
Yeah, it was late. And you could not visibly or audio, you could just feel this atmosphere in Heradsbergen, because everybody's just itching to start, and it's getting dark, and everyone's just looking at everybody else's bike setup and tinkering, and everybody just really wants to go. I could feel it on behalf of all the riders. I was actually really worried about going there and feeling like I'd want to do it the following year, and came away thinking, hell no. So I've utmost respect for the sort of people that do it. So what were your stats on that very first ride? I won't say day.
It was, so we went across the Ardennes. So we kind of cut the Belgium-France border down to Strasbourg and across from there. And it was 6,500 meters, 680 kilometers, give or take a few, I can't remember exactly. Say 650, because it'd be about that, to Lake Constance. And it was 26 hours total. So take off a couple for eating and 24, yeah, it was good. Yeah. But I wasn't even the first person through. It was I was 4th. So there was a couple not far ahead, but then I stopped at Constance and a few went ahead.
Right, so I think that's enough about the road side of things. Because I think what we were really excited to talk to you tonight was about your transition to the off-road stuff, which has been a bit of a theme for 2019.
Yeah.
So what even made you consider going from something that you're really, really proven and good at, i.e. the road cycling stuff, to trying something completely different? Because for a bit of context, I was on WhatsApp with James getting all these messages like, what tyres do I get?
Yeah.
What do I do for this? Like really newbie questions.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I had no idea. I had no idea what gravel tyres I needed for like a gravel race. Yeah.
As in,
even as a gravel expert. Yeah, I mean, that's the extent of my like off-road knowledge. I didn't know what gravel tyres I needed to ride for Italy Divide. I had no idea. Like roads, I know. Off-road, I knew nothing. And that was one of the attractions. If you become a master at something, it's easy to continue doing the same thing and do it well. But there's no satisfaction or there's no pride really, because you're just doing what you know how to do and getting the same result. So why continue doing it? You know, I could have done the Transcontinental again this year, had the same sponsors, had the same thing, and you know, but I chose to say, actually, I've done that for now. I'm going to kind of risk everything, and I had to like find all new sponsors, do all new everything. So I kind of tore everything up, threw it out the window, and had to start from the beginning again. But that offers the opportunity for complete satisfaction again, whereby if I can go from the bottom to the top in a complete new discipline, I mean, I've never ridden a mountain bike before I turned up at the Highland Trail 550, then I can achieve personal satisfaction and fulfillment that is just unimaginable. And so it's that sense of fulfillment that I was going after, really.
Okay, so you've got the whole of the year, and how did you go about planning that? Did you have any sort of like real target events and then some others to fill in around that to practice, or
no?
What sort of?
There was no plan. So over winter into 2018 into 2019 this year, I was sort of working on a different project that didn't really come off because I couldn't raise the money. At the same time, I'd also entered the Italy Divide because I thought, okay, it's at the start of the year, it doesn't really matter what happens. It'd be fun to do something new and different. I can get a sample of that off-road. I love Italy because the pizza's great. And it'd be a bit of a holiday and a bit of fun at the same time. And it gives me a reason to keep cycling over winter because I had no events or races or anything lined up for 2019. And I'm very goal driven. If I don't have something entered to do, I'm not really going to be training as hard as I could be or out there doing these things. Like I need something to focus on. So I entered the Italy Divide. That was in April. We went out, had a bit of a holiday before. I just took a week off. Isabel and I went touring around Campania, the region. And then I turned up to race the Italy Divide. And like within an hour, I was just carried away. And I turned up there just to kind of get some experience, have a bit of fun. And I was there to race, but I wasn't there to like knock myself out. Because if you go full on at one of these races, you're going to feel it for a month afterwards. And I didn't really want that. But it's kind of in my blood. And as soon as we started pedaling, that was it. I couldn't control myself. And yeah, then with Sofan Sahili there as well as an incredible racer, it was like an opportunity to test myself. And we just went full on. And we ended up coming joint first, which is kind of a cool story. We can come to that. But I got back from that and I was kind of still working on this other project. And then around that time, that was sort of fizzling a little bit. And I'm at university, but last year I did a placement year, which meant that my final year or end of year exams are normally during May. But because I was working a full-time job, I didn't have end of year exams, but I could take time off work. And I'd seen the Highland Trail for 3 years or so, followed Lee and Jenny and all these others doing it because it's an incredible race. And I just kind of thought to myself, well, I did Italy Divide, that was a bit of off-road, Highland Trail, yeah, you'd be all right. And didn't have a mountain bike, never done a mountain bike race, nothing. And I kind of emailed Alan, who runs the Highland Trail. And I actually emailed him before. And he told me to pretty much sod off. And he said, no, I don't care that you want Transcontinental. It doesn't make any difference. This is a mountain bike race. And he wouldn't give me an entry because it's like 60 people allowed. It's invitational, more or less. You know, anyone can email in and emails you back saying yes or no. It's really old school. It's cool. I love Alan. And after the Italy Divide, he emailed me saying, you know, maybe we'll let you in. Yeah, okay, you can come along. And I think he kind of just actually wanted to see this roadie suffer at the Highland Trail. And so yeah, then I ended up at Highland Trail, did that. And then after the Highland Trail, the kind of what I was working on completely gone. And I was like, well, I'll do something else. And I was like, I'll do Silk Road. So I was like, Nelson, because the entries were closed and it was long gone. I was like, Nelson, can I get a place in Silk Road? Because he was at Highland Trail and we spoke a bit and I called him up. He was like, yeah, okay. And so it kind of evolved from one to the next to the next. There was no real plan in the beginning. It just sort of happened.
I'd always assumed that you had the big goal of Silk Road and then these sort of other things put in place to sort of warm yourself up gradually from Italy to Scotland.
Silk Road happened the first year that I did Transcontinental, and I didn't do it that year. I saw it, I knew it existed, and I was really enticed by it, but I had no experience riding off-road. And I thought to myself, if I'm going to do an off-road race, I need to get some experience first. Like, I've never been to somewhere as wild and remote as Kyrgyzstan. The highest I've ever been is like 2,500 meters, and in Silk Road it goes to 4,000. I had no experience, and I was well aware of like my ignorance and naivety in that, and lack of experience there. So I saw Silk Road off in the distance as something that I had to do, but I also realized from having made those rookie mistakes in Transcontinental that Kyrgyzstan wasn't somewhere I wanted to go and make those mistakes, because there's no safety net there, really. So yeah, it was always something I wanted to do, but it just seemed completely beyond my capability, or so I thought.
Okay, so let's go back to Italy Divide. What was the total length of that one?
1,200 kilometers with 25,000 meters of climbing.
So for an off-road race that's maybe, would you say, more on the mild spectrum compared to?
Yeah, so when I did it, I thought like it was proper hardcore off-road, and now it's pretty much like entry level, like gravel, pretty soft. There's a few little bits you have to walk, but yeah, I've recommended to a few people that I know that are looking to get into sort of off-road racing. I'm like, yeah, Italy Divide, it's a nice entry point.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what did you find going straight off the back of your road endurance racing onto the off-road? What were the most important things that you learned on that first race? It's that I learned less because it is a lot tamer. So it's a gravel surface, and it is actually it's real gravel, so like Tuscan gravel, rather than the sort of what we don't have gravel in the UK. Like it doesn't exist. We do.
And but like not smooth, you know, real nice. Okay. You know, not so much, not endless like sections of real nice smooth gravel. Yeah, okay. Or I haven't found it.
I'll show you.
But so it was the going was a lot easier. So I had a what people call a gravel bike, or essentially a road bike with, you know, slightly wider clearances and, you know, wider tires. And so the going was a lot easier. So it was tough on my hands. And that was the first thing that I learned, because you're just getting bashed all the time. I had to walk a bit, and I didn't have appropriate shoes for walking. I had
have road shoes?
No, I didn't have road shoes. I'm not a complete idiot. but I had like carbon racing shoes, because I was like, I'm racing, so I have carbon shoes, and they were stiff, and my feet ached from walking, so that was a mistake. And then the Dolomites in April, I underestimated it. I took out a lot of sort of wet weather gear to the start, but when I was packing the day before the race, I thought, I'll just take rain shorts rather than rain trousers. I won't take this, I won't take that, because the weather forecast was perfect. Even up in the Dolomites, it was perfect. And that was the biggest lesson I learned at that race, was that when I got to the Dolomites, so we rode straight through the night on the final night, into the morning at like 500 meters, and it started raining at 500 meters. And I knew that we were going to 1,850 meters that morning. And I was like, okay, you know, it's about 1 degree here and raining at 500. It's not going to be good higher up. But I kept going, because you keep going. And I got to 1,000 meters, and it started sort of snowing. The rain turned to snowing. And I kept going a little bit further, because it wasn't settling, it wasn't too bad. I got to 1,200 meters, and it started snowing heavier. And all of a sudden, within 5 minutes, the cloud enveloped me. And at that point, I had my little rain shorts on and some leg warmers, you know, like summer leg warmers, not really winter leg warmers. And it was 1 degree, snowing, fog all around. I could see 10 meters in front of me. Had a little like rain cape on, you know, one of those cycling ones, pretty useless really. No hood, no nothing. Some cycling gloves. And I was just scared, in honesty, because I was in this situation where I didn't have the right kit. I wasn't really prepared for it. I hadn't been here before. And I knew that I still had 500 meters of elevation still to go through what is in the winter a ski resort. And so I was thinking to myself, okay, you know, I'm in first place at the minute, like Sofan's behind me, but I can't go any higher. It's a race, it's a bike race, who really cares? Like if I went higher, it's going to be a blizzard, I could get lost, I don't have anything warm, whatever could happen. It could be bad. So from a safety aspect at that point, I sort of got on my phone, and I'm in the middle of nowhere really. I started Googling hotels, and I've ridden 4 days straight on 2 hours sleep total. So I'm pretty out of it at this point. So I find a hotel and turn up at this hotel. Banging on the door, there's no one around. And it's eventually this guy turns up because I'm calling the phone, hassling him. He's like, and he thinks I'm an English salesperson on the phone trying to sell him something. But I said, no, at the hotel. And he pretends not really to speak English. It later transpires he speaks perfect English, but he turns up, but it's like 5:30 in the morning. And I have no real, like 6 o'clock in the morning, and I have no real concept of time, so I don't know what's going on. And he's like, and I'm like, can I get a bed? He's like, yeah, okay. And he sort of warms up at this point anyway, and he becomes a bit more friendly, and he realizes what I'm doing, and he's like into mountaineering and stuff. The hotel's in the mountains, so he kind of like clocks on, and he's a bit more approachable. So I sleep for 3 hours, and I'm like, I'm going to sleep for a bit because I can't keep going. The weather forecast says the snowstorm should clear into the early afternoon. So if I sleep for a bit, hopefully it'll be good enough to get going. So I sleep for 3 hours. I wake up, still pretty bad. So I go back to bed for another hour and a half. I wake up and the sun is blazing, and I'm like trying to pack all my stuff super quickly. And I'm like, I'm wasting time, I've got to get going. And I get some biscotti. He sells like homemade biscotti. It's an Italian place, isn't it? So homemade biscotti. So I buy a couple bags of homemade biscotti.
Nice.
And then we head off. But like, it's a long-winded answer to your original question. Was like, I was just not prepared for the potential environment that I was going to be in. So irregardless of what it says it could be, or what this, or what that, or what your friend said, or what happened last year, anything can happen. And when you find yourself off the road in more remote places, the safety net is a lot smaller. So you have to be a lot more prepared for a lot wider environments. And that was the biggest takeaway.
And then moving from that, which was mostly a good weather forecast, to Highland Trail 550, which I think a few people in the room will know was probably one of the wettest editions this year.
Even the Scottish people quit.
I attended a talk recently with a guy from Stroud who did it, and at the end basically said that no one should ever even attempt to go near it because it was so brutal and he would never ever do it again. But it was a good experience. How was it for you? How was your first actual mountain bike event? Yeah, so I got the same bike, actually, this one, a week before the Highland Trail 550. And I had never ridden a mountain bike before. And I don't know, some people would be, think I'm crazy for going up to the Highland Trail, but I didn't really know what I was in for. I'm not really afraid to jump in at the deep end, so I just got stuck in. But I turned up, and I'd obviously learned the lesson from Italy, and I brought rain trousers rather than rain shorts. I brought waterproof socks. They're not really very waterproof, but they work like a wetsuit, so they keep your feet actually pretty warm. I had like the best Arc'teryx coat you could buy. I was going to be dry. And the reality is that over 5 days of constant rain, I was never wet once, and I was never cold once either, because I had the right gear. Wow. So I had a good insulated coat. I had 3 pairs of gloves, and which included like a Gore-Tex pair of gloves as well. And then 1 pair could be wet, and then 1 pair would always be dry. A couple pairs of socks. So I had a lot of gear, but I was prepared for the conditions, and I think it's one of the reasons that I got round, because I was never cold and never wet. And how did you approach that race? Because a lot of your strategy in the past has been to stay in like good quality accommodation and get proper rest. Yeah. Did you manage to find hotels? Did you find lodges?
There's no hotels in Scotland, is there? So when racing the Transcontinental Race, my aim is to be the fastest, or the fastest that I can be. And the way to do that is to get the best quality sleep you can get, because then you can recover as best you can. Or you don't really recover, but you get less bad is probably the better way to term it, because you're going to get nailed over the course of a week in racing so much. And for me, that means stopping at a hotel, because it takes 10 minutes to check into a hotel if you're slick and efficient, 10 minutes to check out. You can also get food when you're at the hotel as well, so you're doing 2 things at once. So you're getting a hotel bed and you're getting a meal. So you don't have to go to a restaurant, wait around. So you're doing both at the same time. And if you've called them in advance and told them you're coming and that you want food, they'll have food waiting. So you don't even have to waste any time. So it's actually really efficient if you're slick. So it's quicker than setting up a bivvy and cooking up food, really. But for me, I get the best quality sleep in a bed, and if I sleep in a bed for 2-3 hours, it's probably worth 6-7 hours sleeping in a bivvy on the side of the road. So if there's an option between sleeping in a bed and sleeping on the road, I'll sleep in a bed every time, because it's a race. I want to be the fastest I can be. I have no qualms about proving how hard I am. I don't need to sleep on the side of the road to prove that. So I'll sleep in a nice bed, and it's good. But going to Scotland, and even more so going to Kyrgyzstan, there's no opportunity for these things. So the first night, so I have my sleeping bag and my bivvy. I love camping out, really, most of the time. Sometimes I like sleeping in a nice bed, especially if I'm tired after races. But I took my bivvy, took my sleeping bag, and I took my sleeping mat as well. So I always take a sleeping mat to these things because it makes a massive difference for insulation off the ground. In some circumstances, you're actually better taking a sleeping mat than a sleeping bag because it's going to keep you warm, especially if you have a bivvy. The first night, I had this goal in my mind to get to what they term the hydrobothy. The hydrobothy could also be termed as a hellhole. It is terrible, as a few people here know. And it had been raining since lunchtime. And I eventually made it to the hydrobothy about 2 in the morning. It took a lot longer than I expected. The road turned to a river by this point. It's called the hydrobothy because it's up by the hydro dam works and things up there. So there's a lot of water already up there. It was raining. And you kind of trying to open the door to the bothy and you think the door's locked. So you're pulling on it, shaking it, but you can see bikes. So you know people are inside and you're pulling on the door. And I want to get inside to the bothy in the dry. Eventually you yank open the door, makes a huge noise. Everyone sort of turns around in their bags. By the time I got there, there was 5 or 6 people already there. This bothy is sort of the size of half of this area here. So it's tiny. Some ignorant people have taken their bikes inside already, which is like really out of order. If you're sleeping in a bothy and you know there's probably a dozen people coming on, don't take your bike inside, leave it outside. It's already been in the rain for 12 hours already. What are you worried about? But I get inside, I've woken everyone up, get out my bivvy bag, because already the floor is sort of, concaved in and there's water pouring into the middle of the floor already. So it's not exactly dry. So I get out my bivvy bag, put the mat inside, take all my wet clothes off. Nothing's really going to dry. There's a chair. I don't know why there's a chair. No one knows. There's a couple of chairs on the table. I hang my wet clothes over a thing. I get inside and I was naked at this point because all my clothes were like a bit wet and damp or a bit sweaty. So I wasn't going to get into because I took a down sleeping bag, which is perhaps a lesson there, with wet clothes on. So this is a bit of an experience. Not so much Italy divide, I'd slept outside as well, but get up 5 hours later. So I set my alarm for 5 hours because I was like, I've had enough. This is wet, it's miserable, it's cold. I'm just going to sleep for 5 hours and we'll see what happens. And it's still raining. And I can hear it on the tin roof. And sometimes you hear it and you think it's bad, but it's not too bad. But like this was bad. And so I set my alarm for another hour and a half, and I was like, I'm going back to sleep for another hour and a half. I wake up again in an hour and a half and see what it's like then, if it's daylight. And I woke up again in an hour and a half, and it was daylight, and I was like, I'm going to have to ride my bike at some point, so I might as well get up now, Got out of my sleeping bag and stuff, and the floor was just sort of wet everywhere. And I had an event sleeping bag, so it was still a bit dry. Start putting on, my wet, slightly damp clothes were a bit sweaty and all sorts of things, because even if you stay dry from the rain, you still get a bit damp from sweat. And I'm now getting a bit cold, so I was just like dancing around trying to get warm again. And so it was a bit of an introduction to off-road racing, definitely.
And what about all the other people in the bothy there with you? Had they already gone?
Oh yeah, they were out like racing, they were long gone. So yeah. People that had come in after me had obviously woken everyone up with the slamming door. And then it got full, so people slept outside. Forbid that in the rain. But yeah, everyone had got up in the night, like 3 hours sleep, we were racing, and been off. Wow. There was like 1 or 2 people there still, but yeah.
And how much of a shock was that to the system in terms of
it was
the
different,
difference?
It was different. I knew that it was going to be tough. I knew it was going to rain. I don't really mind the rain. If you're dressed and prepared for it, it is what it is. And I knew this was going to be different, and I knew it was going to be a challenge, and I had something to prove as well, because I'd been let into this race on a bit of a whim of Alan, and I wasn't going to let the roadie contingency down and embarrass myself. So I'm going to finish. And I just crack back on, really.
Do you find that there is a lot of pressure from people that know your road pedigree and expect you to do super well in these off-road events, or do you feel like people are a bit more allowing in terms of you sort of being the newbie to the off-road stuff?
I don't know. I didn't feel anything. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, any pressure was put on by myself. But I did well at Italy Divide, and I turned up at Highland Trail, and it was only 4 weeks between the two, so it was a real tight time frame, given that I'd spent 4 days at Italy Divide racing full out. I mean, I slept, 2.5 hours overall, turned up at the finish and everything swelled up, everything was broke. It was 2 weeks before I could really even get on a bike again after Italy Divide, because I was just in a state. And then even once I could get on a bike, because my knees were out of pain or the swelling had sort of gone down, that's a good point. I had the wrong saddle at Italy Divide, so I had some problems there as well. That was the lesson learned. You need more padding off-road. But by the time I could get back on a bike, it was a week and a half before the Highland Trail. So I hadn't really ridden much. Mentally, I was still not ready to go and race flat out again. Because it's 75% mental, 25% physical, really, these races, for me anyway. Okay. And mentally, I wasn't even in the right place to be racing full out again, because you have to invest everything and you have to be absolutely committed to go back to that place where it hurts so much. And I just wasn't prepared to go there again. So I had no pressure on myself beyond just finishing in however long it took. I didn't care. I just wanted to finish. Even if it meant it took way longer than the allowed time cut, I was just still there to finish. So that's why I just slept quite a lot the first night. I was just mentally, even as much as I've done this and as tough as I am, I wasn't prepared to go back to that place again. I'm not made of stone.
So you talk about going to this place and how tough and brutal these events are, both physically in terms of not actually being able to get on a bike and mentally. How do you persevere, whether that's within a race when you're really struggling and you've got certain aches and pains and you're doubting yourself, or even coming back and doing more events? How do you get around that?
I guess it's two questions. A lot of people come and do these ultra endurance races once and then they're like, that's enough, had enough, don't want to do it again. And I've done 4, 5, 6, 7 now. I did 3 this year, which was a nasty self-experiment. It didn't work out so well. But for me, one of the key things is that after the race, I will just hang my bike up and take some time off. And after Transcontinental, the 4th time I did it, I didn't ride a bike for 2 months. I went, did a little bit of walking.
Got married.
Got married, drank some beers, had a holiday, had another holiday. And then eventually I came back and picked up the bicycle. And I didn't think, oh my God, I'm gonna lose all this fitness. The key for me for longevity is just take some time off afterwards and then reset, relax, do something else. And then it'll get to a point where you're just really eager for me to ride the bicycle again, because you're just bored of walking or whatever and you just want to get back to your identity. There's physical pain and there's mental pain. There's the torture of knowing you have 3,000 kilometers still to go, and then there's the physical pain of my knees hurting and I can't even push on my knee. The mental side, I mean, who can ride 4,000 kilometers? It seems unimaginable. To me, it's still almost unimaginable. I couldn't, the thought of riding 4,000 kilometers across a continent, I can't contemplate that in one lump. So when I plan my route, I make it 200 kilometer sections. And I've always done that. And so I'm riding 200 kilometers. And if I do it once, I know I can do it again. If I do it twice, I know I can do it 3 times. And everything is broken down into small sections and small goals. So each day I'll say, I want to get to this town at the end of the day, or I want to get to there. And in Transcontinental, it involves going on the phone and booking a hotel for somewhere at the end of the day, and it sets me a short-term goal. Because I can't imagine riding all the way to Greece, 4,000 kilometers away. It's not possible. And that exists off-road as well. Off-road, just set goals and work towards them. And I think if you make it smaller, then the scale becomes manageable, because everyone who's probably doing one of these races has ridden for at least 12 hours or maybe a bit longer than that, towards 24. So that scale is possible, and therefore if you know that scale is possible, you can achieve that back to back. Physical pain is something else. I've read a few studies on pain, and apparently everyone experiences pain to the same level. Your pain isn't worse than that person's pain, but your perception of it and what you can deal with changes. So some people can deal with more pain and it be acceptable, and other people just can't deal with that pain. It's unacceptable. I think you can train to deal with pain as well. Like for me, one of the big things is when I start out training again in winter, I get on the bike and everything hurts, trying to push hard, do some efforts. It's impossible. And some of the biggest gains I make when I start training again are just being more accustomed to pushing hard on the pedals and feeling that pain and that discomfort. And I do like sort of 10-minute efforts, and these are pretty hard. But they do two things. Physically, they build my aerobic system, but secondly, mentally, putting myself in a place where for 10 minutes I have to suffer, and I know I can do it, but I know I'm gonna have to just like suffer to get to the end of that 10 minutes, really helps to build mental strength as well. And you get better just because you're building mental resilience. My first thought when you talked about pain and getting through that was back to Kyrgyzstan this year at Silk Road. It was the third day, and we'd just gone across the climb from Bayatov onto the Chinese highway, which is a nice tarmac section. So you think the going would be nice and easy. But at this point, my knee just became excruciatingly painful for no explicable reason. There was no maybe, I don't know. I don't know. But I'm in the middle of Kyrgyzstan, I'm into the race. What can you do? I'm not gonna quit, because I don't do that. So I got out my Kineso tape, I taped it up the way I've been told how to tape my knees when they're hurting. Still hurt, a little bit less, but still hurt. And I just put more pressure on with the other pedal. And I kept pedaling. And one of the things that I have learned through these races is that sometimes pain will go away. It can be absolutely excruciating and unimaginable. And you don't know how, the pain can be unimaginable. The first time you think that this pain will last forever. But I've had both of my Achilles go in a race, 2 days later, not a problem. Normally you'd be not able to walk for weeks, but it's just disappeared. And so I knew that if I could keep pedaling, this pain in my knee might just go away. And that's what I did. I put more pressure on my left leg, eased off on my right, and by the evening it was acceptable. Whether I'd become accustomed to that pain and the pain hadn't changed, but my brain was just shutting it out, or whether it was still there, I don't know. But the next day, something else was hurting. So if you ignore this pain for long enough, the next day something else will start hurting, and then you can forget
so
about that one.
So you're just moving around the body from one pain source
it's a pain rotation game. Yeah, this knee, that knee, the arm, yeah.
I can imagine that you'd be pretty well accustomed to what you can achieve on road. In terms of like average speed, working out with the elevation, where you expect to be at the end of the day.
Yeah.
How did that transfer when you got off-road?
Yeah, so Italy Divide, I didn't really bother doing that Italy Divide so much because I was just racing flat out. Italy Divide is what I'd call a sprint event. It's twisted, I don't know. It's 1,100 kilometers, so it's going to be quick. It's like, for me, 4 days or under 4 days was my target, and I thought that's what it would be. And so I didn't really have it, I'll be here at the end of the day, because 1,100 kilometers for me is a attainable goal. Like, I know I can do that more or less flat out, which is weird, but that's the point I've got to now. Highland Trail, I didn't have any targets because I had no idea how long anything would take. 1 minute you're doing 30 kilometers an hour, the next you're doing 3 because you're hiking, and it's going to take you, I have no idea how long. And it was torturous at points until I just accepted that. Because I'd be hiking up this staircase with the bike on my back, and I didn't know how long it would take because I hadn't done it before. And if I started to think about how long that this was going to go on for, it would become too much. So I just started to think, well, it's going to go on for as long as it's going to go on for, so the view's great, let's just enjoy it.
So moving on to what might be the highlight of your year, certainly the biggest race, Silk Road Mountain Race, I think is something that captured everybody's imagination in its first year, the year before, including yours. And as you will have seen over the last hour or so, some incredible images from the media team out there who did do a cracking job as well. So it means that we can follow you really well, which is really cool during the race. How did you set about planning for that, and did you go out in advance? Yeah,
so as I said earlier on, Silk Road seemed like something so far off in the distance. I had no experience, no knowledge in how to do this. So if I was going to go and do it properly, I needed to go to school effectively on off-road. So I did the Highland Trail, and that was part of going to school for me, learning to ride a mountain bike in some pretty bad conditions, some pretty bad weather. The exposure in Scotland is pretty bad when the weather rolls in. It's not the elevation, but the wind and the rain is pretty nasty. So I got some level of confidence there. But I still knew that if I wanted to race in Kyrgyzstan and race properly and feel comfortable and confident doing it, because I didn't want to put myself in an environment where I felt scared or at risk of something going wrong, because then I'd be the responsibility of other people, and that's not fair. I needed to go to Kyrgyzstan before the race. And I also knew with the altitude and things like that, it'd be good to spend some time at altitude. So I went out to Kyrgyzstan 5 weeks before the race started. Being at university and things, I sort of had the luxury of summers. And I spent 4 weeks. So I arrived in Bishkek, had a look around the main city, not much there, pretty much packed up my bike and headed out straight away. And then I spent the next 4 weeks riding most of the route and then other areas as well, just getting experience of being out there in the mountains so that I didn't feel scared. Because when I first went out there, I was petrified really. I rode off up to 4,000 meters and I'd never been there before. Anything can happen. You know, was the storm going to roll in? Was it going to snow? I didn't know what the weather was like, what the weather would do. I didn't know what the people would like. I didn't know anything. But over the course of 4 weeks, I went from, you know, being a bit petrified of the scale of this environment to actually being quite comfortable and quite confident in the way the weather worked, the way the terrain was, what I would expect over the other side of that valley, because things change out there quickly. And that opportunity of being able to ride there for 4 weeks and getting that experience was invaluable. Like preparation is one of the big things. I don't really plan, because you can't plan for every eventuality, but you can prepare yourself to be able to deal with most things that might come at you. And being there for 4 weeks prepared me to deal with what came in the race.
So how did that differ to what you expected going over there? What were your sort of...
I had no preconceptions.
No?
Yeah, I had no idea. I knew it was going to be wild, remote, cold at elevation, but beyond that, and hopefully beautiful. And it was everything and more. It's no wonder they capture people's imaginations with the photos, because it is one of the most incredible places I've ever been. Yeah, the people were incredible.
So talk us through the race. How did it pan out? To start with, at least.
Interestingly, so in order to start the story for Silk Road, I have to go back to the Highland Trail as it leads in. So the Highland Trail was at the end of May. On the first day, and I'm sure some of you have seen the video, I fall off in the Highland Trail and bang my right knee really bad. I didn't think much of it at the time, and often adrenaline and other things are quite a nice painkiller, and I continued to ride on it. Finished the race, everything was okay. No, a little bit of discomfort, but nothing too bad. Got the train back to London the next day after the race, tried to cycle from the station back to my house, and I could not cycle. So I took a week off after the race to try and let my leg recover and a few other things recover. I'd not pushed myself into such a deep sleep hole, like from fatigue, so I was not too bad in that sense, but I had some physical issues. Took a week off, tried to cycle again, my knee still hurt. Took another week off, knee still hurt. 3 weeks, knee still hurt. So 3 weeks after the Highland Trail, we're approaching the end of June now, and I've still not ridden a bike. I went to get an MRI, because at this point I was starting to get a bit worried, because Silk Road was end of August, so it's not far away. And I've not ridden a bike. Go and get an MRI, and I have bone bruising on my knee and a strain on my ACL. So I kind of kept this quite quiet at that time, because I didn't really want anyone to know what was going on, that I wasn't able to train, I wasn't able to ride. I still didn't ride for 3 more weeks after that. I went swimming, did a few other things, but I didn't really train. So I didn't actually start riding a bike again until the week before I went out to Kyrgyzstan, 4 weeks before the race. So for me, the preparation was completely unideal. This is in absolute opposite to the way I normally prepare for Transcontinental, which will be like 8 weeks of rock solid, 30-hour weeks training, and I'm just completely dedicated to this. And I've not ridden my bike for 2 months now, right before a massive race. So I have low expectations in Silk Road, to be honest, because I have no idea where my fitness is. It's pretty low. But it presents an interesting opportunity that I can really test how much of this is mental versus physical, because normally I am in incredible physical shape, and then the mental aspect just is there. But now I'm in terrible physical shape, and it's all about mental side. I'm going to have to draw on all of the knowledge and experience I've gained from like 4 races before, and just see where I can go to. So I had low expectations. My only expectation and desire was just to finish Silk Road. I had nothing else. If I finished, I was happy. And that comes from 2 aspects. 1, because of the trouble I'd had for the 8 weeks before. And 2, because I'd never been anywhere like this or done anything like this. And I think one of the most important things is not setting unrealistic goals or putting unrealistic expectations on yourself before these races, which a lot of people do because it's easy to do. Oh, I want to finish in this many days, or my partner's flying out and they're going to meet me at the finish after this many days, or my mate did it in this many days last year, so I want to do. When you do that, on the third or fourth day, you'll fall off your schedule and then you'll fall off mentally. Whereas if you go in with the expectation that I want to finish, doesn't matter how long it takes, I'm just going there to finish. If you're going faster than finishing, just finishing, you're going to feel really positive, and that's going to help build you forward. So for me, Silk Road was quite interesting to test that mental aspect.
Yeah.
So your question was, how did Silk Road go? So I flew out there, trained for 4 weeks, got some reasonable training in, started to feel pretty good. Had a few days back in Bishkek before the race to sort of come down from altitude where I'd spent some time. I thought that was a good way to do it because I'd spent almost 4 weeks at altitude, 3,000 meters there or thereabouts. Started the first day, everyone went tearing off as they do, and I was like, well, I'm not going to do that because that's not really who I am, that's not what I'm about. It's a 9-day race at least, so I'll just pace into it, especially because I don't know where I'm at. And you go from 600 meters in Bishkek and you spend the whole day climbing up to 4,000 meters. And it's off-road as well. And you're lucky or you're quick if you get over the top of that first pass before it goes dark. So we got to near the bottom of the pass and it started raining. We got halfway up the pass, 2,000 meters, and it started snowing. We got to 3,000 meters and it became a blizzard. And I'd sort of, after the Italy divide and having issues with the weather there, I'd gone to Highland Trail, I'd been prepared, I'd taken the kit, and I'd said to myself, I'm never going to allow myself to be stopped by the weather again. I'm going to take everything I need and more, because I don't want to be held up by the weather. So I had everything I needed. I had a full insulation suit, trousers and jacket. I could be out in like -10 and not have a problem. And that was lucky. Went over the top, and I was well behind the leaders at this point, but whatever. Down the other side, went dark, we started climbing again up to 3,000 meters, and it became -10. So by 2 in the morning, it was -10, and we'd been through rivers as well because of the snow. It was seriously wet. So I pitched up my tent on that first night because my feet had gone numb. I have bad circulation in my right foot, and it often goes numb when it's cold. And I didn't want to be putting myself into a hole on the first night because it's not sensible. There's still at least 8 more days to go. Put up my tent. I had a tent rather than a bivvy. Most people option for a bivvy, but I thought safety first. I'm going to take a tent in case I'm out exposed and the snow hits. Got in my sleeping bag. Got naked because it's the best thing to do if you're cold and wet, and got in there, zipped it all up, set my alarm for 5 hours time and went to sleep. Woke up nice and warm, got back out of my sleeping bag. It's still -7 degrees outside, so it's cold again. And it's still dark as well. So I set off and I'm descending because you spend all day climbing and half the day descending. So it's pretty tough. And this is why I took a big down insulation suit, because you're going to spend so long descending. So we went down the first day, and eventually by the middle of the morning, the sun came out and it got to about 8 degrees and warmed back up.
Wow. And it's quite different. Even then, you said you had really low expectations, you'd been pretty unwell physically, and then like the next thing, we're all looking at the dots a few days later and you're in the bloody lead.
Yeah,
how did that happen?
yeah, I didn't expect that. So I arrived at the first checkpoint up on Songkul Lake at 3,000 meters. In, let's say, 8th place, about that. I think I was about 7 hours behind Jakob, who'd come through first. So I was in an okay position. I was feeling pretty bad with altitude sickness actually on the first day. I was struggling to eat and I was feeling sick and being sick. So with that and other things, I was actually reasonably pleased, okay, with where I was at. And I wasn't too worried. Again, it's an 8-day race at least from here. There's a long way to go. Anything can happen. So I rode off into the night that night, and the weather was pretty good. It was not too cold. It was like -2 rather than like -10. So it was not so bad. Descended down to lower altitudes, and I slept for 3 hours. So this was the second night. 3 hours and got going again. That's my sort of standard sleep, 3 hours when I want a long sleep. And this morning, I sort of said to myself, I was doing the maths again. At the end of the day, I think I can get to here. Yeah, I should be able to get to there. And there was checkpoint 2. And I thought, okay, that's a nice target. It's a bit of a stretch target. It'll be about 2 a.m. by the time I get there. But if I then sleep for 3 hours, it'll be all right. So that was my target. And once I set a target, it's set. There's no moving it. It is in stone. It doesn't matter what happens, because I'm pretty sheer-minded. And if I've set a target, I'm not going to back down from it. So I got to 2 a.m. and I was still at least a couple of hours from the checkpoint. The ground conditions had turned absolutely atrocious because there was so much water. It was clay and the soil had just become like peanut butter. And although you could cycle along, it was not very fast going. Had to do a couple of climbs, had to end up walking them because there was just not enough traction. And so it took 2 hours longer than expected, which wasn't too bad over the whole day. I let myself off that one. And I got to the checkpoint at 4 a.m. And so there's no phone signal out there, so no one can really see where you are at any times. No one knows what's going on. So the checkpoint volunteers, I mean, I feel for them completely because they've got me who says, I'm going to be there, I'm going to be there. Because I saw one of the media crew earlier on in the day, I said, I'll be there, I'll be there, I'll be there. And I said I'd be there to them, so I knew that they'd be there almost waiting for me. So I was like, well, I can't let them down now. So they'd stayed up to greet me. And so about 4 a.m, this poor soul, still awake, it's minus 10 because we're at 3,100 meters again, is there waiting for me, greets me in. And you know, you have to sort of sign the log when you get there to say you're in. And he's like, you've arrived in first place. And I say, who was first? Because I'm sort of like half dazed at this point, you know. No, you've arrived first. And I said, no, it can't be possible because there was like 7, 8 people in front of me. No, you've arrived in first place. And I was just, had no idea. And I was like, that's probably not really very great, is it? Because I probably don't really want to be at the front of the race this so soon because I must have pushed on really hard. I don't know what's happened. It's kind of, I think it's gone wrong, really. And they at each of the checkpoints, they ask you a question. And the question is, have you got any comments? And on the sheet, there's a little thing, comments, and people can write their little moanings in there, you know, my knee's hurting. And they go, have you got any questions? I'm just like, it's not the time of day for questions.
I'm sure a lot of people here would have heard about what happened next. Do you mind us asking?
Going up Arabelle Pass on the 4th day, we got to, so you go up a valley all day and it's like a 3% gradient. And he caught up with me near the end of this shallow valley, and you sort of take a left turn and then it just zigzags up and it's sort of 6% off-road, real big rocky stuff. And this climb is about 2,000 meters, 35 kilometers or so. No climb out there is short, but this is a short climb in the scale of things. So an hour and a half later, I'm still climbing, getting near the top of the climb. And this is where things sort of go wrong. So I've got my music in because it's about midnight, completely dark. The moon doesn't come out so much there, so at night time it's pretty dark. Front light's on quite low because I'm just saving battery. I only need to see sort of 5 meters in front. I don't need to see further, so I'm not going to waste it. I'm in my own world as you only can be after like 5 days of racing straight. You know, things seem to sort of stop existing beyond your peripheral vision. And all of a sudden, from the bushes on the left, a horse rider jumps out in front of me and a horse rider jumps out behind me. And now, Kyrgyz people are super friendly, the shepherds are lovely. I mean, they never see anyone else up in the mountains, so they're always like interested. Oh, what's this? You know, they want to say hello, invite you in to their yurt, have a tea, have some food. And I'm like, okay, they're up late, but they just want to say hello. And they didn't really just want to say hello. Without going into all of the details, because it's kind of not the best story. They wanted money off me, more or less is how it goes. And I tried to get away from them. They sort of then chased me down and we had a bit of like an altercation. And I didn't really want to give them money for 2 reasons. For 3 reasons. 1, on principle, I don't want to give people money, they're trying to steal it off me. 2, all of my money was in one place. So I normally keep a load of money. So I have about £300 worth of Kyrgyz som in one place, and then I keep like spending money in another place that's easy to access, and all of my money is with my passport. And I'd finished my spending money at the checkpoint and I hadn't replenished it, so I didn't want to show them all of this money because this is an incredible amount of money. And then thirdly, there's 100 at least other cyclists coming through here after me, so if I give them money, are they going to think every cyclist is an easy target and then just pitch up and get money from everyone? So I sort of felt a bit of responsibility that I don't want to give them money. So I kind of, they were drunk, you know, people out there like to drink a bit of vodka. There's not much else to do in the mountains. And acted quite quickly, got my bike back off them and then managed to turn around and cycle down the hill. Because I tried to go up the hill and you can't outrun a horse up the hill. But I had a thought that I could outrun a horse downhill. And I did manage to outrun the horses downhill, went very, very quickly. And that was sort of that. And it was a weird situation. Like, As I said, you can't plan for every eventuality in a race, but this is one you definitely can't even prepare for. I mean, you wouldn't imagine this happening, you wouldn't want it to happen, and what do you do? So I descended back down to the tarmac road. There's no phone signal in the mountains, and I felt I needed to alert the race organisation what had happened, because there were other people coming through. Jakob was up in the mountains, what had happened to him? So I got back down, I called them, told them, they were like, oh, okay, wow, this is bad. I went back to the checkpoint, and the next day, the police turned up at the checkpoint in the morning. So I'd stopped there for the night because I was like, the race is over. Mentally, I'm not in the right place to continue riding right now. So I slept there. Police came the next day. Kyrgyzstani police are different. They're not like the British police, who are generally pretty good. Kyrgyzstani police are pretty horrible. I considered it like harassment. There was 8 of them sat around a table, pretty much interrogating me. It wasn't really, friendly questioning. I was the victim here, but, they harassed me. Turned out that the police that harassed me in the morning were from District A, and actually the event had happened in District B. So in the afternoon, police from District B turned up and spent another 4 hours harassing me. And so by the end of this day, I was pretty worn out and tired mentally. Like, I'd been through this ordeal, and in honesty, dealing with the police was just as bad as what had happened the night before. So I still wasn't sure if I was going to continue riding. I went back to bed that night, and I thought, so I woke up in the morning. I'm not ready to decide. I'm going to have a breakfast. So I had a massive breakfast. And I was eating my breakfast, and there were some other racers around. They were a bit confused about what I was doing there. And I didn't really want to tell these other people in the race what had happened to me, because I didn't want to impact mentally their race. So I was kind of like, just having a few problems. Yeah, it was cool. Had my breakfast, and I was like thinking. And I remembered that I'd said to myself, I came to Kyrgyzstan to finish the Silk Road mountain race. I didn't come here to win, I didn't come here to come top 5, I didn't really care where I came. I came to finish and just have that experience. And I also knew from history that if I wanted to come back again and try and win it, I needed that experience of the entire event. I needed to know what it felt like finishing. I needed to know how hard those final days were going to be so that I could come back and do it a second time when I needed to. And in that moment, I realized that it didn't matter that I'd come here just to finish this event. And within 5 minutes, I was packed up and I was back on the road. It didn't get easy from there, so I had to leave the checkpoint again, ride back along the tarmac road, turn left, go back up 2,000 meter climb that I'd ridden already. And I went through the area where sort of the altercation and robbery happened. So the first 4 hours getting through there were not much fun at all. After I got through there, things got a bit easier. The rest of the day we went over Tom Pass, which is just incredible. Like, a lot of people hated it because it's like a 3,000 meter climb and it goes on for a long time. And to the highest point of the race, 4,100 meters. The top's covered in snow and there's still a glacier on the top, so it's a bit sketchy getting over the top, so it's good fun. And then over the top it turned to night again. And the good feeling that I had into the afternoon started to disappear as I started to feel sort of anxiety again, and like these people, because there are a lot of shepherds out in the mountains actually. You're not really ever alone out there. You think it's wild, but it's really not. There are people everywhere. And it was a Friday evening and there's a market on Saturday morning. So all of the guys were driving their trucks to market on the Saturday morning. So they pack up, start drinking the vodka, start driving in the evening to market to be there for the first thing in the morning. They rotate turns and drive straight through the night. And they stop and they make coffees and drink on the side of the road. Out there, there's no, coffee shops to stop at, there's no gas stations. So you just stop on the side of the road and that's where you meet and you have some drinks and hang out. And so there were so many people around and I kind of kept thinking, these people are trying to rob me. Are they gonna, I was really anxious. So I got to about 1 a.m. in the morning and then it started raining and I was just like, I had enough. My capacity to deal with this reached the limit and I thought, I've had enough. So I just stopped and pitched up my tent and went to bed. And I think I set an alarm for sort of 4 hours time. I was like, 4 hours, hopefully, I've de-stressed a bit and I feel a bit better and I want to enjoy riding my bike again in the morning. So I woke up, still dark, it was raining. So I was like, no, I'm going back to bed. So I went back to bed again for another hour and a half. I actually forgot to set an alarm that second time because I was quite tired, but I woke up after an hour and a half and it was still raining. I was up at 2,500 meters, so I was stuck in the clouds and it wasn't going to stop raining for most of the morning at that elevation, so there was only one option. I just had to get out of the tent and descend down and it would get better. And this was to be sort of the best point in the race for me because there's this pass called Shamshi Pass. And I'd heard about this before the race. It's kind of a bit infamous, and everyone's, oh, Shamshi, it's the worst thing ever. It's terrible. Like, you're gonna have to hike all day, and then the descent's rubbish. And I'd ridden it in training because I wanted to see what the worst part of the race was like. And I had the best day ever. I knew it was gonna be bad, so I spent 6 hours pushing my bike up to the top. But then I got to the top, and it's like a horse track. And I just descended down. I had the most fun, so I knew when it came to the race, this was gonna be the most enjoyable day in the race for me. So I was looking forward to this. Got over what had happened the day before, and that was done. I can deal with things quite quickly, and by this point I processed it, I dealt with it, and it was locked away now. You know, I was here to finish. What had happened, but it wasn't going to change my enjoyment of this race. And I thought, oh, yeah, if I'm here, well, tonight I can be here, but hang on, if I ride all the way through the night, tomorrow night I can be at the finish. And that was the goal. So once I've set the goal is the goal. And I knew that probably late, I thought late afternoon, early evening, I could be at the finish the next day. And I know I can ride through the night because I've done it before. So I was like, fine, that's done. So ride off into the night. And this is where your sort of question about timings comes into play. It took a lot longer than I expected, a lot longer. So I rode through the night. I had a 20-minute nap because I was knackered. Sun was rising. And that's the best point in the day, because once the sun comes back up after you've been all the way through the night, you know you're going to be fine. For some reason, it hits your circadian rhythm, and that tiredness from your body sort of evaporates from your bones, and you just feel fresh again, like you've had a full night's sleep. Well, that's how I feel anyway. And it was the excitement and the adrenaline getting to the finish as well, and I knew I would be there that day. I thought I'd be there in the afternoon. But we crossed this main road, and I thought, oh, maybe there'll be phone signal. So I checked my phone, and there was phone signal. You know, you might get signal once every 4 days, and it's actually beautiful. So I checked my phone, because I was like, if I'm here, I want to see how long it took the person that won, or, you know, there's about 5 people, 6 people in front of me at this point, whoever they are, to get from here to the finish, just so I can set a realistic expectation in my mind so I know what I'm dealing with, rather than my like lofty and unobtainable goal of middle of the afternoon. So I went on the phone, I was having a look. I was like, no, it can't be right, hang on. Because the dots were so close to each other, and that just indicates the fact that they'd walked, because of the 5-minute intervals, and if they're close, they've walked. And you ride all the way up the valley at about 2% gradient for 150k, and then you hook a right-hand turn, and then you go over the mountain, where it's, you know, proper mountain. And they'd walked from the bottom of the mountain to the top of the mountain. And I was like, 6 hours of walking. So I knew I had about 8 hours of riding to this point, 6 hours of walking to the top, and then 2 hours to do the descent. Headed on up the road, and you get to this right-hand turn, and I'd not ridden this bit before, and you get to the right-hand turn, and it's not like a turn in the road. You can see it coming for kilometers and kilometers, because you're riding up a valley. And you turn right, and you literally look up as far as you can crane your neck back, and the road that you're joining is up above you, and you get your bike and you climb up for about 40 minutes. And it's one of these climbs where you can either put the bike on your back and try and scramble, or you push the bike like this, put on the brakes, take a step, do the same for 40 minutes. And after having ridden for 8-9 days straight, this is pretty taxing when your bike weighs, you know, the best part 25 kilos. It was a road 15 years ago. It's been completely washed out by landslides over the years. I call it a road because it's maybe not. But you get to this point and it starts to zigzag. And it zigzags and zigzags for probably 1,200 meters. And you can see it. And up on the top, you can see a gate that they must have erected when the road was originally put in. And it's tiny. You're kind of like, it's a gate. It must be, what, is that where I'm going? No, it can't be because it's so small. And you zigzag for 3 hours. And this gate never gets any bigger and never gets any closer. And you zigzag and you zigzag. And this is the ultimate torture because you know once you get to the top, it's downhill all the way to the finish. But you never get any closer. Eventually at dusk, I got to the top, started putting on my clothes, and the sun just started to set just as I was kind of almost ready to leave. And I kind of looked around and I thought, this was the perfect time of day to be here. I would not have wanted to be here any earlier than this moment because the sunset behind the mountains, and it was that beautiful colors, and it was absolutely majestic. And for me, it was the perfect ending to this race. There had been so many things. I was where I was meant to be at the time I was meant to be there. So it went dark because I stood around and enjoyed the sunset. and I started to descend down. Now, I'd lost one of my lights in the altercation, so I only had one light, and it was a battery powered light, and I hadn't really been able to charge it because I'd used it all the night before to ride all the way through the night. So I had it on like the lowest setting, which is just useless, really. I mean, you wouldn't want to ride down the road with it, let alone descend a mountain. And this is not a good mountain. It's been washed out by landslides, and I can see why it took people 2 hours to descend in the daytime, let alone at nighttime. And at one point I found myself thinking, this cannot be the path. This cannot be the way, you know, people have come. Because I had my bike on my shoulder and I was scrambling across some rocks with a sheer drop of like 300 meters down to my left-hand side in the pitch black. And I'm like, this is pretty hectic. And this went on for about 200 meters. And I got to the other side, and I took a moment to be like quite thankful that I made it to the other side. Continued descent, and thanks to the light and my tiredness, I think I fell off 3 or 4 times on the descent. So my skills from the Highland Trail have not got much better at this point, really. But I eventually made it down to the tarmac at the bottom. And you hit the tarmac, and you know the race is done. Because it's tarmac, 16 kilometers to the actual finish, and you're like, that's it, it's done. It doesn't matter how long you're done. It's easy. And yeah, pedaled in the last 16 kilometers, and I think I made it to the finish at about 11:30, give or take. So I made it before the new midnight deadline. Yeah, the adjusted deadline.
Apart from Silk Road, then what's on the hit list for next year?
This year I did a self-experiment. Normally I've done 1 race a year because I thought, 1 race, that is enough. I can't handle doing more. But this year I thought, I'll do 2 races, see how that goes. And then I thought, and I'll throw a third in and do 3 races. And I just wanted to see how many races I could do. Because, okay, you can win 1 race, but if you can win 2 races a year, you know, is that better than winning 1 race? You know, so it's an experiment. 3 races was probably too much, as I've found out. So next year I've decided 2. And the other one I'm going to do is the Atlas Mountain race in February. It makes complete sense for me. Having done Silk Road, I've been to one of Nelson's races. I know he puts on a fantastic race. He rides the whole thing before, you know, he's really detailed on the planning. He puts in a lot of effort to facilitate it. So I know that Atlas Mountain will be an incredible race before I've even been there, before anyone's done it. And it's the inaugural one as well, so I had a pretty good fun. And then it's in February, and Silk Road is in the end of August. So no matter how badly I put myself in February, I can recover before August and get some good training in. So it's
fantastic.
Yeah, nice
so
time.
We'll be watching your dot in February then.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Look forward to it.
Thanks everyone.